From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In the NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Fireflies are synonymous with childhood wonder. Growing up in Ohio, I remember chasing fireflies on summer nights. We'd catch them and put them in a jar for a homemade nightlight, with holes poked in the lid, of course. But if you grew up in Colorado, you may never have experienced that sense of wonder. You may not even realize that Colorado has native fireflies. Because of development and pesticide use destroying their habitat, it's difficult to spot these tiny beetles glowing along the Front Range. Scientists with the Butterfly Pavilion in Westminster hope to change that. 8 years ago, they began a program that set out to completely raise a firefly from egg to adulthood, something that had never happened in a lab setting. Now it's happened. This year, a female firefly that had been born and raised entirely under human care at Butterfly Pavilion laid eggs. In July, one of those eggs hatched. We wanted to learn more about what made this such a milestone for insect lovers and how it might set the stage for Colorado evenings filled with fireflies. We reached out to Rich Reading, VP of Science and Conservation at Butterfly Pavilion, and Malaney Dodson, Animal Wellbeing Coordinator, who oversaw the project. Rich, we don't see a lot of them, but we do have fireflies on the Front Range. Where can I go to see them? And are they different from fireflies in other parts of the country?
The fireflies we have are a little bit different. We have discovered that they actually represent some new species to science.
Wow. But
they're very similar to the species you see in other places. And you can see them in a variety of small patches of wetlands, like in Loveland and in Fort Collins, where we do a lot of our work. And then out in Montrose, one of the hot springs has some, the Overlook Hot Springs. So there's a scattering of places, and we're hoping to change that at Butterfly Pavilion by reintroducing them or head starting them into new habitats.
Firefly populations in our state have declined quite a bit over the past decade or two. Is this something unique to Colorado fireflies?
No, we're seeing across the globe firefly populations declining due to overuse of pesticides, habitat loss. Probably the biggest cause of decline is the loss of habitats, wetlands in particular. We're losing wetlands globally at an astounding rate. And then with climate change, it's also a factor that's causing the loss of these animals. And then light pollution causes problems that they have because, of course, they flash, and that's how they indicate to one another that members of the same species are looking for mates.
I feel like I'm not going to look at a firefly flashing the same way ever again. Malaney, what is lost when we no longer have fireflies in our ecosystem?
Fireflies are huge indicator species of ecosystem health. So when we're seeing these declines in firefly populations, it means there's something else going on with that ecosystem. We are very aware that if these guys start to decline, other populations of insects, other invertebrates are also going to decline just because they rely so heavily on things like environmental conditions, different invertebrates for food sources, and things like that. So when we see a decline in one species, it really shows that there could be declines in others in that area.
Rich, when we talked before the show, you compared this Firefly project to some work that's been done to save endangered sea turtles. What makes firefly conservation similar to sea turtle conservation?
Yeah, the way we go about doing restoration of fireflies is very similar to what they do with sea turtles in that we call it head starting. So you take animals and you rear them under human care through that very, very vulnerable early stages of their life when they have a high mortality, generally speaking. And then you put them back into the wild when they've gotten past that very vulnerable early stages of their life. And so we're hoping to do that here at Butterfly Pavilion, is take larvae that are right before they pupate and go into like a little cocoon, if you will. It's not a cocoon, but it's a pupal stage. And then they emerge as adults. So we want to raise them through that early stage, and then we can put them back into the wild, and hopefully they do very well.
Give them a fighting chance, a head start.
Give them that head start, exactly.
Malaney, one of the goals of this project is to restore firefly populations in the wild. What have you learned from this project that will help reach that goal?
From this project, we've really learned all of the different aspects that affect the life cycle of the firefly. So we know when they're breeding, so we know what time of year we can encourage the community and maybe local populations to limit their light pollution so that we can encourage these breeding times and really give them the support during this crucial period so that fireflies can breed. And then from there, we know different environmental factors that affect them, like humidity. So if we can restore wetland areas to provide a better habitat for these larvae to grow up and reach their adult phase, that is super crucial for firefly populations worldwide, but especially in Colorado when our wetland habitats are really shrinking. So if we can work with local communities and things like that to support these habitats and to really keep them in their prime, then we can help restore wildlife populations throughout the state.
Rich, how likely is it that we'll see fireflies along the Front Range again, and how soon do you think it'll happen?
Well, we're really hoping to start reintroducing them within a year or so. And then, of course, we know it takes time for the populations to reach adulthood. It can take up to 2 or 3 years, as Malaney has explained. So it might be a while, depending. But we'll put them in when they're a little older. So hopefully within a year or two, we'll start seeing fireflies emerging in our wetlands right here in the backyard of Butterfly Pavilion.
And Rich, what's something I can do in my neighborhood to help support the firefly comeback?
There's a lot of things people can do to help support fireflies in their neighborhoods. One is don't overuse pesticides. So only be very selective in the use of pesticides if you need to use them. Second, don't use too many lights if you don't have to. So those lights can be very disorienting to fireflies, as I mentioned earlier. When they're flashing their signals, they can interfere with their ability to communicate within the species. So reducing light pollution, and then supporting organizations like Butterfly Pavilion and others that are interested in doing work to support firefly recovery is another way to really help the group of species that we call fireflies. They're fascinating.
Rich Reading and Malaney Dodson are with Butterfly Pavilion in Westminster. They spoke with me about the Firefly Life Cycle Project, which aims to help restore firefly populations across the Front Range. We'll have links where you can read more and see photos in our show notes and at kunc.org. And just a reminder, we publish every interview we do as a podcast. So if you enjoyed this conversation, check out some recent In the Know-Co episodes about wildlife, like The Strange Tale of the Demon Bunnies of Fort Collins, How to Survive an Encounter with a Moose, or how the folks at Butterfly Pavilion are enlisting volunteers to help monitor Colorado's butterfly population. We'll include links for those episodes in the show notes and at our website. Again, that's kunc.org. That's it today for In the Know-Co. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.